Guys, welcome. Hello. Wow, we're really doing it, aren't we? No, this is not just another sound design hangout. The 21st, I believe. Wow, that's really weird. As soon as I said that, it actually said 21 on the bar counter up here. I know I always say this is an extra special SDHO. Like out of a force of habit, I guess. But this one really is special. Not because I'm talking with this mic a little bit lower. Maybe that'll help with some of the like pops and clicks and plosives. Because like I'm no expert with microphones. You know what I'm saying? Like give me the digital audio or even some instruments like some guitars or basses. I'll record them. But like microphones, I never have a need to record microphones. I don't do any singing or anything. But anyways, we'll see if that helps with some of this. Everything's trial and error, right? But anyways, back to the important thing. This is probably one of the only SDHOs I actually thought about a lot in excitement, in anticipation. Why? Because this is an area of Ableton. This is an area of sound design. This is an area of music production. This is an area of audio engineering. Say what you want, say what you will, that I really haven't done. I mean, I guess you could say whenever I've done sound design stuff that had like short, quick envelopes, it gave very drum type sounds. You know what I mean? Or anytime I worked on Collision, which is like a percussion physical modeling synthesizer, I was making drum sounds, I guess you could say. But I never specifically, in any of the straightforward tutorials that I made, and all of these SDHOs, I never did any drum synthesis. And why? Well, so I'm not just excited because I'm like, hey, we haven't done drum synthesis yet. I'm excited because I haven't done drum synthesis in like a year and a half. Now, it could be longer. Like, I just don't have a need to. You know, I'm the kind of person where, I'm not sitting down and doing Ableton all the time, okay? Like, that's I used to. Now there's just a lot of other things I do. I still get down and I work on my skills, and you guys see the majority of it. But for the most part, like if I want to work with drums, I want to just have drum presets, like drum rack presets I can go to, and then I can start making drums. Whether I want to practice like finger drumming, because I haven't done that in a while, which we could definitely do a tutorial on finger drumming, whether you're doing it on pads or you're doing it on like an actual MIDI keyboard, which was my preferred way to do it. Or I'm just trying to make drums, like sequence drums in a MIDI track, in a MIDI clip. I want the drums to be there. I want them to be ready to go. You start designing drums, it's like a multi-hour process. And I do want to move quickly through these, even though it's been so long. So I want to start you off with, and this applies more to kick drums. So, how do I want to start this here? Well, for one thing, I'm going to drop a drum rack on here. And C1, actually, no. C1, if you had like a pad controller, if you put C1 down there, it would be like your lowest one, which is where your kick drum would normally be. But as you guys know, I use my laptop. So we got to record enable. See, it's up here. So I need to go to here, this C3, and this is where I want to start putting my thing. So I'm going to put mine in C3. You might just keep it where it was. So I'm going to drop in. So when you have this drum rack, you can drop any instrument on here, which is why drum rack can almost allow you to do all of these interesting things, not just for like coordinating drums. It's pretty cool. I'm going to try not to get too deep into a lot of these things because I want it to be more about the sound design, because it's a sound design hangout. Where we can hang out and talk about anything. By the way, I don't know if it'll come out before this episode or after this episode, but I've got a pretty interesting video coming for y'alls if you enjoy hanging out with me and you are okay with me talking about other topics. It's like a podcast where I just talk. I think I'm going to call it Hangout Land, you know, because in this land, all you do is hang out and talk about stuff. So, anyways, let's keep going here. Operator. I'm going to drop it on C3 because I know if I hit this button on my keyboard, it's going to trigger it. And I want to make a kick drum first. What I'm about to tell you is going to apply mostly to kick drums, but really to any sound, any drum sound. Someone very wise, I don't know if they created this or if someone else did, so I'll just say it's anonymous for right now. But what the person or being said was good drums, and especially kick drums, good drums aren't found, they're created. And the reason the reason why this person was saying this was because when we design this kick drum, which is, we're going to start with the kick drum, then we're going to move on to other common drum sounds. This kick drum has properties. You know, it's not just low sound, it's not just punchy sound, it's not just clicky sound, it's all three. So we may, because we can do this, we can come into here and still group this, but I'm going to see if I can use all of these guys together. So when I use operator, and if you come over here into the master tab, you'll see we're on the default routing algorithm, which it's not bad. We could use this if we want to get an extra interesting kick drum sound, especially when that's more FM. But I'm going to come all the way over to here. This one says you will hear the output of the waveform from A. You will also audibly hear the output from B and C and D if there's, of course, levels here. So what is coming out of A? Well, I want to get a punch because kick drums should really be punchy. Now, the thing is each time I hit a note, it doesn't, if I play any other keys, I'm actually just playing this drum rack. You know what I mean? So you might say, well, I don't want this sound. You know, it's too, it's not punchy enough, or it's not beefy or bassy enough for me. Well, that's when we come into here, which is actually something we've also not used, but it's when you click fixed, you can give it a fixed frequency. So I think we were up somewhere around here. Okay, so now we want to, give this a punch. So we want this oscillator A to give us the punch part of a kick drum, which is like boom, boom. It's like the element, the like implosive or real explosive element. You know what I mean? A boom. You could think of like a punch. You know what I mean? But I bet you that was probably be a very good, thing to sample would be that. So 1 second here. I hope this doesn't turn into like a 9-hour SDHO. I don't think my laptop would be able to handle the video editing of that. So what I'm going to do here is we need punch. Now, how do you get punch? Because if I hold this down, you're just going to hear a bass tone. That's not punch. The way you get punch is a sound parameter that is very important to the sound, such as the volume, the pitch, the frequency. Because ultimately, when you're designing sounds, you're working in the realm of pitch, volume, and frequency. You know, the pitch is what is the note? Oh, it's 91 hertz, which I don't know, that might be a G note, might be a F, I'm not sure. You're dealing with volume. How much volume? Well, right now, that volume is controlled by this level parameter, which we're going to leave up here, this master volume. But how would you control volume over time? You would do it through the volume envelope, okay? And when you go from a high to low to when you go from a high amount quickly to a low amount through volume, you get a punch. Also, you get that when you go into the pitch envelope and you make the pitch go from a high pitch to whatever our starting pitch is, you also get a punch. And the same thing will happen with the filter frequency. Now, you can use all three of these. It doesn't necessarily mean that one will be better. Oftentimes, you just have to tweak envelopes till you get a good punch, and the rest will take care of itself. So right now, I'm going to show you with the volume envelope how we can get a good punch here. See how that's punchier? So I bring the sustain all the way down. See, before it was up. That means if you hold it down, for as long as you hold it, it'll sustain. And if you say, I want a big bassy tail like that for my drum sound, well, we're getting there. Remember I said a good kick drum is made? Or really any good drum sound is made. It's not just like one quick thing. So right now, if I lower the sustain all the way down, if I push the decay, now that's punchy, but it's not really like thick and big, right? Like boom, boom. Now that sounds better. Now that's better than, but it's not that punchy. Now we can play with this frequency. We don't want it to be that high though. So that's one way to do the punch. I'm going to put that sustain back up, and I did not like that punch. It was not punchy enough for me. For this kind of a sound, a kick drum, I think you really want to use the pitch envelope. So here's our pitch envelope amount here. We remember when we click around to these shells, this display updates. So make sure you're in the pitch shell, and you've got to push this to turn it on. And we want to make sure destination A is on, which means this pitch envelope will affect destination A. So go back to pitch here. I'm just going to turn it off B, C, and D for now, and just keep it on A. And this says over 400 milliseconds, it's going to go from an initial peak of 12 down to the sustain amount 0, so our initial tone. So with pitch envelope turned off, but listen what happens when we turn it up. Turn it off. But let's turn it up more than 12. 24. Peak, I think you just have to set them both. Now lower the decay. Adjust the pitch envelope. And that's a good punch. I don't really need much more. So this frequency, and you'll find if you're like, oh, I need it to be higher, well, then you'll probably need to go back into pitch envelope and adjust pitch envelope amount and the initial. You can really get away with anything. So I did 24, which is 2 octaves up. I could have gone 48, could have gone to 48. Oh, no. And you'll find out that it really doesn't do that much better of a job, because to make 48, 4 octaves above go down, you have to decrease this decay. So you almost get kind of the same sound with this one going out 104 milliseconds as you would with the other ones, but just play around with it. I kind of liked where we were, so I'm going to keep hitting it, and I'm going to go back down the frequency. And because I don't want this to like ring out like that, because I want my bass tail to do that, I'm going to come into this, make sure we're on shell A here, and I'm going to right about there. Lower the decay a little bit more, because I want B. Put it on fixed. Hear how, I want to make sure we're still recording. I always wonder, I'm like, I hope I didn't accidentally record it or stop. Okay, so back in here. Let's get this, lower the frequency. See how we have that? But I want to, because this is happening here, I want to go into the B's attack envelope, and I want to like move it out of the way a little bit. Listen to it get clearer. Too much. Let's do 300. Force a habit, sustain. I always take down one or two decimals because this says bring in the sound to its full, or bring in the volume of B over 300 milliseconds from its lowest volume up to, like, think about it like that, like bringing in from here to here. Do this over 300 milliseconds and play at full volume or about full volume or wherever this thing is. I'm leaving it all the way up for now. Now we can tighten this a little bit. See, like how it sounds muddier down here? And you can give it a really long release, so all you have to do is just tap a button. And a little trick, eventually I may want to just process these individually because now I'm like, oh, I kind of want to like give some filter drive, but now the filter drive will apply to everything. So if we go in here, give it some filter drive. Okay, I'm going to leave that. That was a little bit too intense. It's like making a weird noise. I don't know if it's like, I don't know why there's like a kickoff like that. What is that weird noise? What weird noise am I getting? Are you hearing that? It's like glitching. So yeah, you've got all these different things to change. Let's put the filter drive on 3.33 so it doesn't freak out. One more secret. So go into A. This is our punch. The B was the tail, and we'll do one more extra trick. And you know this extra trick is a very important one, which is definitely worth a like. So A, I'm going to give A little bit of an attack because I want to make room for something. So C, I'm going to go to C, and I'm going to give it like a square wave, and I'm going to go into envelope, and I'm going to make it really, really short, and this gives it a click. Now listen to what happens when I turn this up. Hear that? Now it's got that like little kick. So you just play it in like, let's go back to our punch. See how it sounds like things are overlapping when it's at 0? So you make room. Now we can go into here, push Command G, and we can start mapping things. So I can click on this frequency and go map to macro 1, and I can call this Punch Freak. And you can give it colors too. What else did we want? And by the way, I mean, you got to understand, when we did this punch, all you needed was a sine wave. Biggies. Pitch envelope. Let's map that to macro 4. So we'll just say pitch envelope, and I'm going to make it green, a shade of green, because I also want to be in this pitch tab. What else was very important to our sound? This decay. So I'm going to map it to 3. Just call it pitch decay, give it another green. Which this might not be because I always tweak the colors and whatever later. So what else was important? Maybe we could do filter amount. This would be sub-level. We'll do tail. Just call it subtail or whatever you want to call it. Subtail level. And map this to macro 5, and we'll call this one, wait, where's rename? And we'll call this one click amount. You know what I mean? Because like you don't really, so when you play, you can play these instead. And if you want to fine tweak them, you can go to map and you can set the parameters. So like when you're turning knobs or whatever, or just turning these like with your computer keyboard, you can set the ranges. So like when you do turn it on these macros, it'll stick. Cause like I don't really need the subtail to be at 1,000 hertz. Yeah, go back. That was awful. So you can just tweak these things and you've got your customizable stuff. All right. So that was beautiful. Now I'm going to drop another operator into D3 and I'm going to call this snare. Now, snares are another example. Now, I'm not really trying to make an absolutely convincing snare drum sound, because if I want something that sounds just like a snare drum on a drum kit, I'm just going to get a good snare drum sample and I'm going to add some of the usual things to make it my own, to make it punch and hit through and have the pop in like the sound that I want. But for now, I'm just trying to give you basic sound design ideas of like what generally you would do to get that kind of a snare drum sound, especially using, you know, more of a traditional synthesizer like an operator. You know, like we can get more physical, real world accurate drum sounds in Collision. I don't know if they're going to give a good, they might, because we've got that noise oscillator. So snare is about noise. Now you might think, well, we're an operator. We don't want to use square waves and variations of square waves and saw waves and sine waves to make, I mean, that's good for like, I guess a kick drum, but you're not going to get that with a snare drum. And what I would tell you is, well, if you forgot that pretty much every synthesizer is going to give you a noise form, well, that's what you need. Now, if you play this, and I'm going to lower the frequency here. Ouch. Oh, sorry, I guess I didn't lower the frequency. So let's go into A, and let's give it an envelope and see what it does. See if it gives us more of a snare sound. Let's come to kick. By the way, if you come into here, you can lower the volume for the chains. The snare is not going to be as loud as this kick. So this snare, it's much too low. So let's double click on this snare and let's do a few things. Let's bring out the decay. I'm going to bring up the sustain. This is just the volume of A. So this, see this filter? We want this. Remember I told you that the filter going from up to down really quick gives it a punch? Well, that's what I want to do, because I want to burst a high frequency, because a noise waveform gives you all of the frequencies, all the harmonics, all at equal volumes. So I want this filter to start up and whoop all the way down. So how do you do that? With a filter envelope. So right here, this is saying it's starting up in over 600 milliseconds, which we'll start with for now. We want it to go all the way down. But we have to give an envelope amount, because right now we have, can't hear that. So we want it to go down like that. So let's give it a filter envelope amount, because otherwise it doesn't matter what we have going on over here. That doesn't do anything until we add this amount. Okay, let's adjust the decay. Now let's adjust the envelope of the volume of A. Give it a little bit of a release, but make sure you go to filter and give the filter envelope a little bit of release. So as I said, by the way, we're not done with the snare. But like, clearly someone would be like, oh, that sounds like a kick and a snare. It might not be your favorite snare, but that's generally how you make a snare, is by white noise. Because when you hit a snare drum, a lot of white noise is coming through. But when we think about a snare drum, it's really made up of 3 parts. I'm not going to go too crazy into this, because to be honest, I wanted to go over how you would, using traditional waveforms, square, because the most basic waveforms, and think about it, Ableton's analog, so any subtractive synthesizer, any FM synthesizer, all you're really using is the basic waveforms of sine waves, variations on saw waves, variations on square waves, and then there'll be like a noise oscillator. So it's like how you would make this this stuff with like your more traditional, utilizing the more traditional sound design synthesis methods, with filter envelopes, volume envelopes, and then obviously the traditional waveforms. So you get that kind of snare. I was about to say snare wave, which should be a genre. What kind of music do you make? I only listen or make snare wave. Like, oh my God, she must know something no one else knows. It's like, no, she just really likes snares. I only listen to snare wave. It is. Why do you like it? The chaos. Isn't there always some lady that's always like, chaos? It is chaos. Okay. Whew. Snare. Kind of boring, right? So what would you do? Well, really quickly, just go add a quick reverb, because snares do love reverb. See, now it doesn't just... Why does it sound so much better? Because now it doesn't just sound like noise. And you can adjust your decay time. Here, let's draw on a quick clip. Go to B for pen tool. Snares go on the 2 and the 4. Kick goes on the 1. If you want, kick can go also on the 3. Doesn't have to. And maybe you might put another one somewhere in like there, and let's click play. Duplicate. Add a snare up here. So right now, guys, you'll notice that, while I'm on my drum track, just rename it to drums. Not like that mattered at all. Right now we're in like the clip view, because we're looking at the clip. But if we push Shift Tab, we go to the device view. Why? Because we've got our devices here. Shift Tab again, go back, Shift Tab. Just like if you are up here or anywhere and you click Tab, you go to arrangement view. This is where you would like put your stuff out and like turn it into a song. Oh, it's a 3-minute song. Oh, that must be a real barn burner. You know what I mean? You lay it. You see, you got them here. Got my resampling recording track here. Got the drums track here. Okay, go back to tab. So yeah, this was kind of what made Ableton kind of like its own thing. So anyways, I pushed input output over here to do that, just to tidy my workspace. So we've got this snare. So what else would you do to the snare? Well, I kind of want to just stop here so I could keep moving on, because I actually don't mind how this sounds. So really quick, because I want to do more interesting stuff with collision, and I don't want this to be over an hour, and I did an 8-minute intro, which would normally have been too much talking, but like literally I feel like everything was supposed to be said there. So the snare. So the snare is also made of 3 components. A very bright, clicky part that's very short, so we could go into our snare and we could, go back into one of these ones and go into B and turn B into like a saw D, go to envelope, very small envelope amount. Wait, am I in the right one? Really doesn't do much. Actually, let's move this. No, you want to know why? Because I was like, oh, give it a very bright waveform, saw D. Well, dude, there ain't anything much brighter than a noise form, because it's every single harmonic. And because it's going down with such pyo, pyo. Oh, someone, thank you. One of you guys in the comments, if it's one of you, congratulate yourselves, give yourself your own like, because all that really matters is that you like yourself at the end of the day. So let's go into pitch. Let's give ourselves a little bit of a pitch envelope. Nothing's happening. Why would that be? That's weird. I'm on snare. I guess it's because there's no way to... Well, here, turn these all the way up. Oh, wow. Going backwards gave it more punch. Turn it off. That's a little bit too aggressive. I'll just turn it off. To be honest with you, for that, we really only need the filter. So before moving forward, yeah, you could come up with another sound that's very, very bright, a very clicky thing at the beginning, and make it very short. Move the thing out of the way. It'll give slight extra character. I really don't think you need to do that. I will go into this filter right here, and I will give it some filter drive. Oh, whoops. Give it some filter drive. And maybe play around with this resonance. Sounds kind of good, doesn't it? All right, so let's click play. Back into the snare. I don't want it to be so long. And how silly am I? I should give this snare another color. All right, so let's, we're gonna go a lot quicker here now. Drop a other operator here. I'm gonna call this guy hat closed. Gonna give it a yellow color. And it's basically going to be the same thing as the snare. So we're going to go to white noise, and we are going to make it a very short envelope. And again, this is just a very generic hi-hat sound. We're going to make sure we're in eighth notes here, and we are going to take the velocity down to the second one. We're going to make sure we have velocity enabled, which we do right here at 50%. We're going to go into filter, go over here to frequency to velocity, give it a little bit, and we are going to just click play. Well, take B to go off pen tool, select these hats, and just push Command D to duplicate. I just want a very basic pattern, eighth notes, and click play. So what do we have? A. Watch this decay. Sounds, give it some filter envelope. I don't like that. Turn off the filter envelope. It's better just before. Like, I'm gonna put the frequency all the way up. Just see like this, So remember I said punch can be achieved three ways, because ultimately when you're sculpting your sound in the most fundamental base layer components, you've always have a volume. Your sound has a volume, it has a pitch, and it has a frequency content. You know, a frequency is its fundamental, which is it's a pitch, and then all of the harmonics that may or may not exist. Now, when we did the kick drum, we made the pitch go from high to low, and that gave us the right kind of punch for a kick drum. But then with our snare drum, we made the filter, which controls the frequency. We made that go from a bunch of frequencies to lower frequencies to give us that amount. And now with the hi-hat, we're realizing that just by utilizing the volume envelope, going from a high volume to a low volume, it's giving us more of the acoustical or tonal characteristics of more of a hi-hat. So let's click play again, and let's just keep going. And it's got that, it's got a movement to it because we've got velocity enabled, and we have these velocities for the hi-hats. And if you want, we could do something fun here. Let's push the grid up to 16ths. Do it again here. This might sound good. Or maybe move these over here. Maybe make this one a little bit more velocity, this one a little bit more. And you can do that with the kick and the snare too. And it's, you know, it's really good to do with the snare. So here's the thing, before we move on to an opened hi-hat, the snare is, so the snare drum basically has the initial, so the snare has like a white noise component because like underneath a snare drum, there's like these like little wires and that gives like a very white noisy component, but you're still hitting a drum. So like a lot of like synthesized snare drums will have this sound, which is very white noisy, but then they will also have layered into them more of like a tom sound, like a tom-tom sound. And so you can mix those together, but also, you know, drums have a resonant capability. So how do you add resonance? Well, if we, hey, where'd my hi-hat go? Or where'd my snare drum go? What you would do is you would come in and give it, how would you give it a nice customizable sound? Well, you would go to Corpus, right? And I'm just gonna, and if you went all the way dry, and you can adjust the tune. And now let's click play. Let's do membrane. I think you can see the power in that. So basically, if you want a very traditional, very quick snare drum sound, you just need white noise, and you want to have a filter envelope. Because if you don't have a filter envelope, all the frequencies going through, it's just going to be white noise. And yeah, you can put a volume envelope on your snare. But for the most part, a lot of the punch of your snare is going to come from filter envelope. Which we have, go to envelope here. So this shows you what the filter looks like. See how it's down at 102. You go over here to envelope. It goes down. It didn't need, the sustain didn't need to be down all the way. It could be for yours. That's why you want to tweak a lot of these things. When we were on the kick drums, see how we did all these mappings. I'm not going to do that for these. Honestly, I don't even think we're going to have time to get to collision today. I wanted to show you kind of like the most straightforward way to do it with like traditional synthesis. So like you could use these same methods in analog, you could use these same methods in wavetable. So we've got our hi-hat closed. So now I'm actually going to take hi-hat closed and I'm going to option drag it to D, and I'm going to call this, and I'll also make it a yellow color. Hat open. Honestly, because like, you know, when you hit, because you go like, this is our hi-hat, ready? You know, like, like when you got to, and you go, it's like you're hitting like a crash sound, right? So I'm going to go to this open one, and I'm just going to give it a longer envelope, right? So I'm going to click, where is it? Okay, right there, E. It was E on my keyboard. So hat open. I'm just going to drag out this decay. It's a little bit too loud. No, I'll just have to go and lower the overall volume. So when do you get those ones? Well, you get those ones typically, I'm going to go in here and adjust the note bar division to 1/8 notes, and I'm going to put the hat open up here. So now let's click play. I'm going to come into here, turn it off B. I'm going to click this hat, turn that hat off. I'm going to turn this, see? And then, I don't know, what do you want to do? Let's go to hat closed. It's like hard for me to think while that's going on. So here's what I'm going to do. I've got a pretty good idea. I don't know if you guys knew that you could do this. So I push this R here for return effects. I'm going to drop this reverb in here, and I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to turn up the dry wet because it's a send. I'm going to put this decay up, and what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to route these, which if I want to see the routings, I have to go to sends, and I'm going to... listen to what happens to the snare. The snare already has a lot of reverb on it, but listen what happens to the hat. The hat closed when I add this up. And I'm going to add it too. This is basically, we can choose if we want to bathe all of these sounds in our reverb here. So check this out. Ready? Listen to the close. See how dry that hat sounded? Let's put a lot. Now let's get some of the snare. Maybe a little to the kick. All that's naughty. You don't want to do that to the kick. Go to the reverb. Make sure we've got a good pre-delay, which means it starts, it like lets through more trans. It's like an attack. All right, guys, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is I'm going to do one more sound. The bad news is we're not going to go to collision today. Maybe it's better I split these up. This would be like the true bare bones nuts synthesis way to create drums utilizing a device, basically utilizing the basics, the most basic waveforms. You know, and if you go to analog, what do you got? Square, you got sine, saw, square, noise. Got it. That's subtractive synthesis. You come into here, operator. We're going to call this Tom or Tom1. Sorry, navigating this drum rack, it's just closing things and I'm trying to open them and then that's closing another thing. Don't let any of that intimidate you. But yeah, so operator, same thing. Sine wave, different types of sine waves, saw waves, different types of saw waves, square waves, different types of square waves. Triangle is basically an abbreviated square wave, and then you got white noise. And even if you throw in a wavetable, you know, it's the same thing. It's basically just, instead of those basics, which look around here, basics, sine wave, saw wave, square wave, it's just other types of waves or waveforms. But what do we do with them? We do the same thing. See this amp? This is our volume envelope. See this free running envelope? Well, we could come in and we could route it to pitch. Do that same thing. In fact, let's go back to basics. I'm going to arm this track here. Let's go to sine wave. I'm going to turn this to 0. Remember our sine wave? I'm going to... Right? But remember we said we didn't want to use the amp for that. We wanted to use pitch. Let's go to envelope 2 and let's route it to pitch. Let's route envelope 2, opening up, going down. And let's route it to pitch. Go to matrix, go to pitch, but not oscillator pitch, pitch. Remember that? Envelope 2. Let's adjust this decay. Same thing. And then you might think, well, what if I change this? See, guys, if you're like, wow, these sounds are amazing, when will I ever learn this? How can I learn all of this? Yeah, you can take 10 years like it took me, or you could just get the shortcuts and realize that if you really understand this stuff well, you kind of know what things sound like, because ultimately we're taking these sounds and we're using the most basic building blocks of sound: volume, pitch, and then the harmonic makeup of the waveform. The harmonic makeup of the waveform is like how bright. So if a sound is like, or, you know, one of them has a lot more frequencies, you know, but they might have the same pitch, but ones might have a different makeup. You know what I mean? So like in this tom one right here, this sine wave only has just this one. By the way, oh, I've got to push record enable. So if I do this, those are harmonics, but it's still, I want to get rid of all these. It's still this. This is like that starting fundamental. So basically we're doing the same thing with the tom drum, except instead of having it like here, we want that pitch envelope. But we want the frequency to be higher. Now let's go into the envelope, and if we want, we can customize it. You don't get the opportunity to do this much. This is just a cool thing about this particular, like, look, okay, that's kind of weird. And then what we can do is we can then come into filter, make sure we've got this envelope, jack up, but we have to lower this frequency. Play with the filter, or the frequency. And maybe we'll turn this up to give it some FM. Sounds bad, but that's because we can add this filter. See, now it has kind of a punch. So that's tom 1. What if I took it and I did option drag into F3 and I called it tom 2, and let's give these some sort of color solidarity. Because they're the toms, yay! Let's just do something very different. Where is it? Let's play with that new thing. Where's tom 2? Okay, let's just keep everything the same, and then why don't we? Ooh, hold on. Let's get some reverb. Send these to the reverb unit. The reason why we're sending all of the reverb, or all these sounds, to the same reverb is because it gives the illusion that all of these are played in like the same room or whatever. You don't have to do that. You could put different reverbs on all of them. That's pretty cool too. So for this tom 2, make sure you got it selected. If we come over here, we can go to audio effects and we can use the brand new shaper, wherever that is. Shifter. And I'm going to play the first one. And I'm going to tweak this while I do it. I don't know why it's doing two things. Why does it sound like two? Why is it like two? It's weird. Probably because this thing is on. No, it's not on because the amount is down. That's weird. I'm putting the pitch up. I'm going to put this back to 0. I'm going to play with the fine. Weird. Why is it not pitching the way I would like it to? Well, there's a better way to do it, is that we adjust the actual... Where are we? Adjust this frequency. So like, for instance, if we do 280 and we double 140... Because if you double, that's like an octave above. So we got these cool sounds. So check it out. You can go in here. There's our kick. Why is it making that high-pitched one? I don't know why. So yeah, I mean, is that like a tom sound of someone hitting a drum rack? No, but like it just kind of gives you an idea of like, okay, this is what like a traditional or very synthesizer like. If you're like, hey, those kind of sound like those drum racks we have, where like the drums kind of sound like weird computer drums, you know, and it's like, well, that's the point. Cause like, you know, if you have a synthesizer and someone's like, make drums with your synthesizer, you know, you basically have sine waves, which are going to be better for like tom drums, better for kick drums. And then you're going to have square waves and saw waves, which are really going to sound very more like a synthesizer-y drum, which that could be good for like a tom drum. You could get some of that, mix some of that in with like some noise for like a unique snare drum. Like there are no hard and fast rules. That's probably like the number one thing to know with sound design is that it's your design. Like it's your philosophy. You know what I mean? So if someone's like, wait, you didn't use a noise oscillator for your snare drum? No wonder it sounds weird. You're like, it just sounds the way I want it to. You know what I mean? So play with the envelopes, play with the pitch envelopes. Again, volume, pitch, and then the frequency or the harmonic makeup of the sound, you know? So, and how that goes from a high to a low, that sort of quick movement. So from the frequency side, it goes from all the frequencies. Think of very bright, or think of that noise waveform. It's every frequency. But when you go from over like 200 milliseconds, it gives a. And you do that with the filter envelope. Now, you won't hear the filter envelope unless there's an envelope amount. Now, as we saw with the hi-hats, they were also made up mostly of noise. But we didn't need it to go from high frequency to low frequency really quick. We needed the volume to go from high volume to low volume. Well, that's the open. Where's the hat closed? Then for the hat open, well, we needed the sound to ring out. We wanted an open hi-hat, or you know, a crash or a ride sound, which we could have gotten into like resonators. So for instance, if we go to hat open, okay, are we on hat open here? Okay, and we scroll over here. Well, I need to make sure I know how to play hat open. Which note is it? Okay, hat open. So like a resonator that would make it sound more like a ride or a crash cymbal. So if we go to audio effects and we go to resonance and we throw on, let's just put on a resonator, regular good old resonator from way back in the day. You know, you can be like, but you know what I mean? Like, there's ways you can make it sound a lot more different. Maybe you'd rather have that. I'm just finger drumming on my laptop. My laptop is like, don't hit me too hard. You need me for years and years. You know what? I realized this when I was playing my drum kit that my dad has that he never plays, and I never really play drums, but like when I was learning drums, I was like, how would a drummer play? Well, there's all these tom-tom drums, and I'm like, you know, I feel like drum grooves could use some more tom-toms, you know what I mean? Because they're pitched content. So smash a like if you like that. We did it all in operator, folks. We could have done all of that in analog, and we could have done all of that in wavetable, utilizing traditional sound synthesis methods. And we could have made more FM sounding drums if we wanted to, because operator does the FM. But now what I want to do is I want to make all the same fundamental drum sounds, but make them in Ableton's Collision, which is their customizable, which is their physical modeling drum synthesizer, or percussion, we should say, because I'm not trying to make these sound like your everyday drum kit, you know, that's like a drummer's playing in a building. You know, just like cool drum sounds, because that's what always excited me about Collision, is that you could make these unusual drums no one's heard of before. And if you rely on samples, if you have crappy samples, which are any samples that bad anymore these days, but if you rely on samples, you have to find the samples where you can just go into collision, drop a whole bunch of collisions on these drum pads, and then literally just like go and make them. So I hope you enjoyed this. So we use basically more traditional waveform and synthesis to make these, you know, utilizing the envelopes, whether routed to pitch, volume, or frequency. Maybe using a combination of all three, and then we're going to be going into physical modeling synthesis to make these same types of drum sounds, but to make them in this wonderful physical modeling percussion synthesizer that comes with Ableton Live Suite. Yeah, this was amazing, and I think the next one will be just as amazing. And I'm actually curious to know what you guys enjoyed learning the most from this. Like, what was like the coolest thing that you learned that you maybe didn't know? And did you even know that you could make these kinds of drums in Operator? And yeah, Collision, next one will be even better. Whoa. Lunch by 30 minutes. Oh no! You do that yawn every time, Chonky. Right on cue. He's like, I'm a creature of habit. Just give me my damn KB. We just call it KB. Roy, can you sit? Paw. Chunky paw. Have a good one.